Welcome back to another episode of our podcast, where we explore the journeys of professionals who have pursued legal education abroad. Today, we have an exceptional guest with us, Miss Rishi Agarwal. Rishi is an Indian qualified lawyer specializing in international arbitration and dispute resolution. She holds an LLM in international arbitration and dispute resolution from the National University of Singapore and a PG Diploma in alternative dispute resolution from NALSAR University of Law, Hyderabad. Rishi ma'am also has a BBA LLB from Amity Law School with a specialization in international law. With a rich professional background, Rishi ma'am has appeared before the Supreme Court of India, the Calcutta High Court, and the National Company Law Tribunal, handling various commercial disputes, insolvency proceedings, and constitutional matters. She has also worked as a case manager at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in Singapore, where she assisted in administering international arbitration hearings across multiple jurisdictions. We are excited to hear her insights on navigating the world of arbitration and dispute resolution, her journey across different legal systems, and of course, her advice for aspiring lawyers. Without further ado, let's welcome her to the show. Hello and welcome, ma'am. Welcome to Brief Encounters. It's an honor having you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm quite glad that I'm part of this project. And I hope that, through this podcast, I'm able to answer all the questions and help students, because when I was doing my law school and when I was thinking of pursuing my master's, I had a lot of questions in my head. Some people did help me, but a lot of them I had to go through on my own. So I hope I'll be able to answer all those questions, which I did not have the answers to initially.
That's amazing. That was our aim with Project LLM, helping students now at least so that they have an open avenue to all of these questions, which I think is very common that arises in everyone's minds when it comes to them. So let's begin with our first point of discussion. This was a question that we ask all our guests. Was pursuing a career in law always your ultimate goal, or did your interest in this legal field evolve over time?
Okay, so just to give a brief background about myself, I actually come from a family of lawyers. So law has been something that I've been seeing since I was born. I remember spending my childhood outside courtrooms where my mother would be arguing the cases. So this is how my journey would begin. However, seeing my mother in the profession, I felt I was not cut out for it. I actually wanted to be a neurologist as a kid. I had a neighbor who was a top neurosurgeon. And seeing him, I was quite motivated and inspired to be a neurobiologist. But things change, priorities change. My mother wanted at least one of her kids. She has two kids. I'm the younger one. She wanted at least one of her kids to be in the profession, or so they say. She tried my sister to get into it, but she was not quite inclined towards law. And then came me, the younger one, her only option. So while I was studying in school, she was like, why don't you, join some CLAT coaching center, just like, take some tuitions and see if you like the subjects. She had this feeling I would like it. And she wasn't wrong. So, yeah, she was the one who gave me a nudge. But when I started taking those classes, is when I started to truly enjoy it. Another anecdote that I would give you, which my mother always brings up, is from my childhood. So, being exposed to law and being exposed to, all these courtroom proceedings at such an early age, I had started to build a vocabulary which had a lot of legal jargons in it. As a kid, I still have those drafts that I had made. I had drafted an agreement for my father at the age of 8 years old, where I had put in my terms and conditions that he needs to fulfill during our vacation. Like I had terms where he had to take me out on a vacation twice a year, one abroad trip and one trip within India. So yeah, like my mother says, when I read all this and when my mother tells me all this, she was like, you were probably born to be a lawyer. You just didn't know it. So that's how I got into law. So for me, it's a legacy that I'm continuing, but also a chart and a path that I'm trying to build for myself as well.
Right.
So yeah.
That's a very interesting story. Funnily so, from most of my guests, I've heard that their parents had said that why would you go for law when medical and engineering is a field that parents most commonly suggest to children? And the fact is, while the legacy obviously did exist, the growth was very organic and the signs obviously existed. I mean, an agreement at the age of 6 is not something which every child does for their parents. It's a beautiful journey. I love hearing about everyone's journey and how it started. So you post-CLAT, you pursue the integrated 5-year BBA LLB from the Amity Law School, specializing in international law. How did this undergrad experience, and if did it influence your interest when it comes to international law specifically?
So, with international law, I would like to tell you that my interest began with the when I was in school itself. So, I used to love doing debates as a kid. So, I used to participate in a lot of model United Nations debating competitions, etc. And so, when I was exposed to my first model UN, and I was representing Crimea in a Crimean crisis, I got to learn more about the UN system, how it works. And history has always been my favorite subject. I am a big reader, I'm an avid reader. So for me, stories are something that, always interests me. So for me, history was something that I truly enjoyed. When I read about the World War II and all of these things, it naturally inclined me towards pursuing international law. Because when you read international law, there's a lot of history that goes behind it. When you read the treaties, how they come into force, why they come into force, the rationale behind everything, you tend to develop that kind of affinity towards the subject. So that's how my affinity towards international law came into play. And when I started doing my LLB, so from the third year of our law school, we're supposed to select our specialization. So when this option became open for me to pursue international law, I just knew I wanted to take it.
Wonderful. And post that, is that also one of the main reasons that helped you in evaluating your LLM options?
Partially. Second reason would be arbitration as a subject. When I had started studying it, not a lot of students were doing international arbitration courses. It wasn't that popular in India, I would say. It was gaining momentum, but it had not become very popular as it is now. Now every student, whenever they reach out to me on LinkedIn, they want to ask about international arbitration, and they all have this interest to get into dispute resolution. But when I started out, and at that point, all these judgments were still coming out. If you've read Vidya Drolia, you would know what I'm talking about. So international arbitration and arbitration itself was quite developing at that point in India. So when I was studying arbitration in my fourth year of law school, I had an opportunity to attend a SIAC seminar, which was in Delhi, and I attended it. And I got the chance to interact with Gary Bond. He was the lecturer, he was the one who was speaking at the conference. And I saw how, vast international law can be. It's not just, when I was studying in my law school, international law was taught in a sense that we were studying about the treaties, we were studying about private international or the conflict of laws and how these legal approaches are applied, right? But when it came to the dispute resolution aspect of it, that wasn't very widely taught in my view. So, part of which was another reason why I also wanted to do an advanced study, because there were still subjects that were unexplored for me, uncharted for me. So when I started studying arbitration, I found that it is quite efficient. It is developing, and it also aligned my legal goals in the sense that I really wanted to contribute back. So for me, it was always a goal that I would come back to India at some point, and then I would start working towards it. So for me, international arbitration came into picture in this manner, because we did have international arbitration, as because arbitration conciliation part 2 of the act is international arbitration. But back then, at least as per my knowledge, I did not hear of any major international arbitrations taking place, that too in India. So yeah, so that was my rationale towards pursuing international arbitration, just to get into the dispute resolution part of international law and how multiple laws and multiple legal systems are applied when there are different countries involved with different jurisdictions involved. So, yeah.
Right, right. I do agree. I mean, I have also noticed like an attraction to international arbitration in the past 3, 4 years. I would say it wasn't that quite of a famous field. Yeah, I do agree with you on that.
It has rapidly like gained momentum
Right, yeah.
over the past years. Also because CJI and a lot of lawyers and from the International Bar Association and from even a lot of institutions such as MCIA, and they are all promoting arbitration very rapidly. Even our government is promoting international arbitration. If you've heard their speeches and if you've read them.
Right. So, following your undergrad studies, you pursued a PG diploma in alternative dispute resolution from NALSAR University. What motivated you to take up this particular diploma, and how did it contribute to your expertise?
So back in my law school, I studied arbitration, but I was studying arbitration which is solely in India. When it came to pursuing dispute resolution from NALSAR, we studied contracts and we studied international commercial arbitration, but at a more in-depth level. Another reason why I chose to do a diploma during that period was because that was the year of COVID. It was 2020, and I had just graduated. So there were not much opportunities available. So I did not want to waste my time. And I thought, since I am interested in arbitration, I should study something related to that and sort of build my niche if I want to pursue a career in that. And so I decided I'll gain an advanced degree just to gain more, advanced knowledge about the subject. So that's when I decided that, I would do a PG diploma and not waste my time that 1 year that we had a major COVID lockdown. I did not want to waste my time doing nothing.
Right, right.
So this was more of a skill building exercise for me.
Yeah, it was basically a practical experience, a skill-based learning experience.
Yes.
Wow. So, post that experience, you decided to pursue the LLM in International Arbitration and Dispute Resolution at the National University of Singapore, one of the best universities there is out there, in my opinion. Could you walk us through what inspired you to pursue a foreign LLM and how it aligned with your broader legal goals?
So foreign LLM, I decided to not do my LLM in India for a very particular reason. The reason was that when you study abroad, you're exposed to a whole lot of different things, be it the cultural exposure that you get. Secondly, the international exposure that you get. So for me, it was very important to get out of my comfort zone, which is India. So until unless this is my belief that until unless you get out of your comfort zone, you don't really know what's out there. So for me, I really wanted to pursue a foreign LLM, and I had some other universities in my mind as well as when we talk about those things, the post selection and stuff. I'll tell you all of that more in detail. But for me, I wanted to learn about the various legal systems because when I studied international law, so the world is basically divided into a common law system and a civil law system, if you've studied about it.
Right, yeah.
So when you do an international arbitration course abroad, what you do is not just learn about the legal system that's prevalent in the common law, but I also got exposure to civil law system and how law is interpreted in civil law system, something that was completely new to me. Secondly, there was a particular subject that was very important and very interesting, which I'd never studied during my law school, was investment arbitration. So for me, I went to NUS with the sole goal of studying arbitration. But when I joined because I was so inspired by Gary Vaughan when I first met him. And when I got to know that he teaches at NUS, I was like, this is it. I really need to, be there. I was a huge fan. So I wanted to be there at NUS. So I joined with the perspective of, to attend his classes and, to gain more exposure about national commercial arbitration. But to my surprise, when I reached there, when I started reading more about investment arbitration, I just became mesmerized with that subject. I was like, I want to study more about this because, again, it brought me back to the public international aspect of international law, where you have treaties.
Yeah.
So when I started studying investment arbitration, all those principles of public international law, I could apply it in practicality in investment arbitration. which was quite fascinating for me.
So your life has been quite a lot of twists and turns. You go with an intention to discover something completely new, and that's the best way of working, I guess. It's like an example of life is what happens when you're making other plans, basically.
I think that's what life is about. You
Yeah.
may think that you want to do something else, and you plan your whole life around it,
Mhm.
and then life comes up with something new and it throws at you, and you're like, oh wait, maybe I can do that as well. I didn't know this. Maybe I can do that.
And those are the best parts of life when you discover something you didn't know about and you're like, this is what I've been waiting for. Wow. So now that we go on to the course selection, the application process, when considering a master's degree abroad, what factors did you prioritize in selecting NUS and how did you finalize it as your choice?
So when I decided, so first thing that, like I told you, the first thing that I decided on was the subject that I wanted to pursue. I would always suggest that if you're trying to pursue a master's, you should always choose a subject of your liking that you want to pursue your career on in a long term, as a long term goal, or as even as an interest, even if you don't have a long term goal to pursue that particular subject. You should have that interest, that inclination, because LLM is again a very huge commitment that you're making to yourself. So it's quite important for you to know that, okay, I'm choosing this subject and I want to study that. So for me, arbitration was something, as I explained earlier, I started liking that subject in my fourth year of law school. So naturally, when I started studying it, I decided that, if I have to do a master's, if I want to do a master's, it would be in arbitration. So then I chose my subject first. So that was the first part of it. The second part came research. So when I knew that I want to study arbitration, I started researching about the universities that offer these courses. Now, I did not get into the rankings because I feel that the rankings do not justify the quality of courses that they offer. For example, Cambridge is a very good, very reputed university, but it does not offer a niche arbitration course. It does not have a niche international arbitration course, just to give an example. So for me, the second criteria became to look for universities that in particular offer arbitration as a course and dispute resolution as a course because I wanted to specialize in arbitration. So I started looking for those universities. I factored down to 4 universities. I did not, mind you, you should be very particular about the universities you're applying and you should not apply to 10 universities. A, it's a waste of time. B, it's a waste of money because you have to pay a lot of money to apply to these universities itself. And it's a lot of work. So, you should always work smarter. You should think that, okay, zero down on the universities and then go forward with it. Now, when it came to zeroing down my universities, the way I went about it was I would go into the university website. I would read about the course that they're offering, the subjects that they're offering, and the professors who are teaching them. The next step in this process would be for me to see on LinkedIn or read about these professors and the kind of work they have done, just to know the quality of professors that are coming to this university and the kind of work they have been doing in this. So these are the few things that I looked into before I chose my universities to which I would apply. So when I did that, I zeroed down to 4 universities. Cambridge was one of them, but I was again looking at an alternate option as a general. So Cambridge was an option in that sense. Other than that, I applied to UCL, which had a commercial and litigation program and offered arbitration as a niche. Second university was Queen Mary, and the last option was NUS. So I had all these options that I had zeroed down, and I only applied to these 4 universities. I did not apply to any other universities. So then, when I applied to all these 4 universities, I got acceptance offers from all three, except Cambridge. I got acceptance from all these colleges. And I was quite stuck between NUS and UCL for the reason being they are quite similar in their ranking and they have really good professors in both the university. Then I look down at my mentors. I look forward to my mentors to help me out with this predicament. So because I've had the privilege of coming from a family of lawyers, I have always been surrounded by judges and reputed lawyers in the field, right? So for me, that really helped me. My mother's connections, my mother's relationships in the legal field really helped me, as I reached out to them and I asked them, where should I go? Which should be my best option? Conventionally, most lawyers in India, they tend to prefer UK over Singapore. And they have this UK fan. It's been for quite some time. So I remember I met Justice Indira Banerjee, and just for this purpose, as I was heavily confused as to what should I opt for, and she told me UK is conventional, but Singapore could be new, and that was her answer for me. And so I went with the choice of going to NUS, and that's how I decided to pursue my LLM at NUS.
Wow. But 4 universities and then getting accepted, it was a hard risk game, but that was amazing. I think you're very right. You have to play smart. It's an expensive process and a time-taking process at that.
Yes. So, and mind you, you'll have to write different SOPs for each of them.
Yeah,
so for you, it will take a very long time. I remember when I started writing my SOP, it took me 3 months to write it and perfect it. So if you're putting that much time, you want to do it right. So just don't just don't try and apply everywhere. I don't believe in putting, in the numbers game and applying to X, Y, and Z university. It does not help.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you need to know where you're going.
This is a very unique advice. I think more people should be aware of that. I think people focus on numbers because they think the chances of getting into some university would be higher because of that.
An LLB and an LLM is that you're doing this out of choice. You are already a lawyer after your 5 years of law school. This is just an additional degree that you're taking, but that degree should justify. It should justify, right? What you're doing, the money that you're spending on it should be justified.
Right.
So I really believe in that. So that's why I didn't feel like I should apply to 10 universities. Maybe if I had applied to 6 more, I would have gotten into 6 more. But that wouldn't serve my purpose. It would just add more to my confusion, which I already had. So it's much easier to choose from 4 than to choose from 10.
Very true. That is also very true. So let's focus on the LLM program for the NUS. Now, I mean, we all know that it's an increasingly competitive program over the past few decades. So how did you prepare yourself academically to stand out? And what do you believe were the key factors that contributed to your success in gaining admission there?
So the number one thing was I did not go to any of these career loan, like those, you call them, those businesses where they fill in your applications.
Right.
Yeah. I decided to not
admission counselor.
Yes. Yeah. Admission counselors like Chopra's, or I don't know the others. I never went through with them because they, as far as I have, as far as my experience, they only try to push you towards the universities that they get a commission from. Or they would push you towards UK universities, again, where they're getting their commission from, which does not help my goal. And they charge a hefty amount to do something which I feel you can do it yourself. It will take some time and it will give you a whole lot of stress and anxiety, but it is much better to do it yourself. So for me, I decided to not take any advice from these counselors regarding my SOP or anything, and I decided to do it all on my own. So yeah, I started with my application process 4 to 5 months in advance, the deadline date, of course. And I zeroed down on 2-3 things: my SOP, my mentors, my LORs, basically, my letters of recommendation. The third thing was the CV. So many of the students don't know how important your CV is when you're applying for a master's. You need to realize that you're not applying for an LLB anymore. You're doing your master's. So they expect you to come with legal knowledge, at least some foundational knowledge that they expect you to come with. And by foundational knowledge, I don't just mean the studies that you do in your law school, but I also mean the practical experience that you come with, that you gain through your internships. Exactly why we do internships during our law school is to gain practical experience. So with NUS, they require you to put your CV. And as far as I know, with UCL itself, UCL also, they require you to put your CV, because they not only gauge you on what you've learned and how much you've scored during your LLB, but they also see how much you've learned, like what is your true learning. So for that reason, I feel your CV is extremely important. And it's very important that, all your achievements, all your skills, whatever you've learned, it's very rightly portrayed in your CV. It doesn't matter if you don't have that particular experience yet. It's desirable, but it's not relevant in that manner that, you need to have an arbitration experience prior to joining an LLM university. So for me, these were the three things that I gave much importance to. Coming to my SOP, I know it's very difficult to put your life's journey in 750 words in 2 pages. If somebody has to ask you that, how has your 25 or 23 years of existence been, it's going to be a long story, a long journey. So for me, what I did was I decided to make it personal. A lot of students, they go into the generic thing writing about, this is the major mistake that they make. When they read your statement of purpose, they are truly asking for what your purpose is. Like when we started this podcast, you asked me why I chose law, and I had a journey to that. So when these universities ask you to write your statement of purpose, they really want to know what your true purpose is. It might not be law, or it might be law, but they want to know who you are, because they've not seen you, they've not met you. And this 2-page essay is what they have to get to know you. So I feel you don't need to faff it. You really don't need to faff it. You need to be very authentic when you're writing this. So when I started preparing for my SOPs, and I saw a lot of templates online just to get like a, the structure of how I should structure it, I found it that it's not authentic. It's very, very mechanical, in the sense that people have listed their achievements, and quite unrealistic as well, because it does not show your growth. When I say growth, it also means that you've had lessons where you have made mistakes in your life. So when they see that, when they see your holistic growth, they feel that, okay, this person is genuine, and this person has actually worked hard to be where they are. So that is what I try to portray through my SOP, at least one part of it. The second part came as to why I chose NUS. So when I did my research about the professors who are teaching there and the kind of work NUS takes up, so NUS has a Center for International Law, which regularly takes up surveys, and it regularly takes up research work in international law, which was something that I was very intrigued with. So when you look for a university, you need to see the kind of work they are doing in the field, and you need to show the university how that inspires you and how you would want to be a part of it, because they want you to contribute at the table. They don't want you to come to, say, NUS, and they don't want you to just come there, study there, get a degree and get out. No, that's not. Their goal is for you to learn for life. So they want you to give back to their community as well, the one that they've been building for so long. So that was another aspect of my SOP, where I wrote how I would contribute to their university.
Right.
It does not have to be flattery. It has to be real work, and it has to be real answers. So for me, I wrote about the kind of things that I would like to do for the field, for international arbitration as well, which is my long-term goal. I have actually, this is something that's been going on in the works. So with my mother, we have actually opened a mediation and arbitration center in Calcutta. So I have been trying to put in all the learning that I have done and all my practical experience that I have, gained in Singapore, and I'm trying to apply it in my own city, my hometown. So this is what I'm talking about. They want you to contribute. They just don't want you to come there and study. And
Makes sense.
so when they see that from your SOP, when the university sees that you're capable of doing something like this, or this is your main goal, they tend to naturally like you.
Wow, congratulations on the arbitration center in Calcutta. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
I mean, people have dreams, but going through with it, as you said, opening up things that also help you follow your.
It's very small right now,
Right.
and I'm trying to implement the new technologies that I have seen abroad in international arbitration hearings. And I really want to bring those in India, and I want to apply it in Calcutta because I have attended arbitration proceedings in Calcutta. And I find that they are not very technologically advanced in that sense, which does not make it very efficient. So efficiency is something that I really want to bring in when it comes to arbitration.
Right, and everything starts small. It's supposed to start small. That's how you know it's going to reach greater heights in the future. And I wish you the very good luck for that. So thank you so much for the SOP advice. I think that's great advice. It's very particular, it's very on point, and I think it explains exactly what students should do when focusing on their SOP, especially the CV portion. That should be kept in mind when people are applying for the LLM applications. But besides these, were there any additional resources or tools, I understand, besides your mentors also, that proved especially helpful during your application process?
So LinkedIn is a very resourceful tool, which you must know by now. A lot of students do now.
Yeah.
So your LinkedIn is your Google, basically. You will find professors, you will find students who have studied there, you'll find lawyers, you'll find arbitrators, everything you'll find over there. And we have this fear, some sort of insecurity that, if we approach this person, how will they react? Is our, first thing in our mind. But, when you write that first message and that cold message that you first write it out and then you send it, and when they reply back to you, you realize that, okay, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to approach people. And once you find that you approach people and they're helping you, you realize that, okay, I can ask for help. So for me, when I was doing my research, I also spoke with students who were studying there, and I also spoke with legal professionals who have already studied there and how their journey has been, which is exactly what you're doing right now with me when you're asking me these questions.
Right.
So for me, I approached these people on LinkedIn. I asked them how to go about it. I gave them my CV to proofread and showed them that, is this the right way to go about it? And they gave me some really valuable feedback, which really helped me structure my SOP really well, which is again the reason why I did not go to these counselors, because they would come up with very generic advice, because I don't feel that the kind of SOPs that they put out, it's up to date. I think it's quite out of touch, to be honest.
Right.
So I would rather ask people who have already gone through this process, as they would know better, as they've clearly gotten into my dream university. So they know what works.
Right.
So that was my approach.
Okay, so we understood the application process. So NUS is renowned for its focus on practical and interdisciplinary learning. What were your biggest takeaways from this particular program?
The biggest takeaway was to study smarter, because it requires you to not just read what is there, not just read the facts, but to understand the underlying concepts. So with NUS, the major difference with what I studied, how I studied in India and how I studied at NUS was, in India, we went to a lecture expecting the teacher would teach us. And as far as my experience has been, but with NUS, they expected us to come and contribute to a discussion. So every class would be a discussion about a concept. And what would be our takeaway from that? And what would we want to say about that? So we would have readings, which would include judgments from different legal systems. Primarily, we focused on European legal system and the US legal system when it came to case laws. So yeah, we would study these case laws and we would try and gauge the underlying concepts within those judgments and what they are trying to say. And then we would have a discussion on it and what would be our perspective on it. So when I went to NUS, I took primarily investment arbitration subjects. And apart from that, I took a lot of research paper subjects, because I felt that research is one thing, that is research and writing, legal writing is quite important for me to develop. So when I took those research paper subjects, I was given a free hand to choose a subject, to choose a topic of my liking within that field and to write about it. and I had a mentor who was guiding me through this process. So I took conflict of laws during my second half of the semester, and I took a subject which was essentially a drafting subject, where they made you draft procedural orders and they made you draft a statement of claim, how to write a legal memo. So very practical. So the NUS offers these kind of subjects where you can do, where they give you actual like case studies based on some cases. They've made it hypothetical, but they are actually based on some real life event, and they expect you to solve it. So when it came to my drafting subject, we had this river water dispute, an investor state dispute between three countries, and we were asked to draft a statement of claim or a statement of defense. So the class was divided into two, and each student was given to draft a statement of claim for that entire case. So it's a very practical learning, and the professor who taught us is a leading practitioner in arbitration. So for us, we got some real life insights as to how you should go about your drafting. Then we were asked to draft a legal memo. When we drafted a legal memo, a lot of students thought, okay, we'll put in just the positive aspects of the cases, like, say I'm fighting for the petitioner. So then, I'm just going to put all the point that favors me, and, I'll get my good grade. But then when he handed over our assignments with the feedback, he told us it's not just when you speak to a client, when you're advising someone, when you're giving an opinion, it's not just about telling them how you would win the case and how these are the meritorious points in your case. But another aspect that's important is to show the loopholes that exist in your case. And that is something that is quite relevant now when I'm practicing, because now I just not only look at the case from this angle, that how I have to win it, but I also see the holes that I have to cover, build my case. So this is something that I got to learn when I was studying at NUS. Just one of the things that I learned. Just wanted to highlight this particular point.
That's amazing. Do you think we could also apply that when we're making our memorials for moot court competitions? Like, I'm just trying to understand.
Absolutely. I think when you a moot memorial is like a case that you're fighting for your client, right? So when you're doing that, you need to keep in mind that the other side will always have some points. You should never underestimate your. That is the first thing. So when they are studying, they will always try to look at your case from both angles. That is the first thing that I would say. That always look at a case from both angles. If you see that there are pros, there will be something. No case is watertight. No case is watertight. There will be points which will go against you. So now your challenge is how to tackle those points. Because your points, they are solid. You will be able to persuade them on those points. But what about the points on which they can persuade the court? Those are the points that you need to tackle, and you need to fill in those holes before they can make it. And that's how my research would go. So I always make my research like our professors taught us. You should always make your research in a yes or no. So say there's a particular question that, okay, whether it's a jurisdiction question, for example. If it's in your jurisdiction, yes, okay, you will win. You'll win the jurisdiction aspect of the case. If no, then how do you tackle it?
Right.
So there's always a yes or a no.
Mm-hmm.
So if you follow that pyramid, you'll find your answers, and you'll also find the loopholes in your.
It's somewhat finding preempt arguments which could have been raised from the other side, but it's something that you fill up on your own.
Exactly. It's the questions you're already preparing. These are called propositions. So you prepare those propositions, which you feel essentially the court would want to know. When you read a case, when you read the case for the first time, when you summarize it in your head, okay, you feel that, okay, this is the key issue. This is the underlying issue that's going on. Then you try to think from a judge's perspective, like what can they possibly ask? When you think of, so you have to, when you're building your case, you have to think a little beyond your case.
Makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
So during your academic journey, you managed to engage actively in co-curricular activities as well. How did you balance your studies with these?
It was quite hectic for me, to be honest. Packing a lot of things in 1 year. It's a very brief period of time that you're there in the university, and I wanted to make the most out of it. So for me, Professor Eleanor Wong. She was the Moot Court Society head at NUS. I really wanted to be a part of the Moot Club, the NUS Law Club. So for that reason, I joined the NUS Law Club, and I was part of the student mentor program where I was mentoring high school students with respect to policy making. So they were making a policy on smoking, on how smoking has negative impacts. So for me, I had to guide them on how they could make the policies and how it can be structured. So that was my work as a student mentor.
Right.
I was working with a local school in Singapore for this.
That's amazing. And then the last year, you also attended the Winter Arbitration School course by the Arbitration Lab at the University of Basel. Can you share your experience with us? How did this program complement your existing knowledge?
So this is a little further from your end because this course was attended by professionals. This course had a lot more subjects than in arbitration. Now, when you delve into arbitration, you'll realize it's not as niche as we think it is. It's quite broad. You have sports law, you have intellectual property arbitration. There's a lot more fields in it than just arbitration. So when I went to the winter school, I had already connected with one of the professors who teaches there and who is the founder of this course, Professor Yarik, if you've heard of him. So I attended this winter school. We had to do an assignment, by the way. You have to clear it to get your diploma, your certificate from the course. It's not just a course that you go and attend. So a lot of practical experience was given in the course. We had a lot of arbitrators, a lot of partners from very big law firms attend that course. And it was a networking event as well. Because apart from attending the courses and learning about the institutions which they represent and learning about the European law, the way arbitration is handled there, apart from that, I also got to network with these people. I remember meeting a judge from ITLAWS during the winter school. So it was also a networking event for me. So when you get out of your law school, even when you are in law school, you will find a lot of these winter schools, and I don't know if you've heard of the Hague Academy. It's quite reputed, right?
Right.
So, these are places where you also make connections. So for you to survive in this field, you need to start building a network. So for me, winter arbitration school was first part of it. It was a learning experience as I wanted to learn more about different kinds of arbitrations which I had not studied before. For example, sports arbitration. I've not studied sports law. It was something completely new. So I wanted to study that. Secondly, I wanted to network with people who are already there in India.
Right. Yeah, the Hague Academy, I think the Mixed Geneva program also. They are some of
Yes.
the famous programs I've heard about with regards to international arbitration. Very true. So you worked as the Permanent Court of Arbitration. How did you secure this opportunity and what was the experience like?
So I don't know if you know this, but Singapore job market is the toughest job market, one of the toughest job markets in the world. Again, this you might say is a twist of events for me. For me, it has always been like so far that you've been on my journey, that it has been a twist of events. So for me, I was doing my LLM and I I was so overwhelmed because there was so much competition. And I saw when I went for the career fair, a lot of the law firms in Singapore, they told me that, you're not a Singapore qualified lawyer. So you cannot practice here. So that would be a very big hurdle for you to cross, practice in Singapore or to get a job in Singapore. So I was quite demotivated, I would say, initially. And I thought, I don't want to stay here. If, because my jurisdiction and my practice, I can't practice here because my law degree will not allow me to practice here because I don't have a Singapore law degree. Then I was like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy the remaining 1 month left of my LLM. And, I'll go back to India and I'm going to practice. I did not have this in my mind that I would practice in Singapore. Then one fine day, I had a conversation with my mother. And I just very casually told her that my roommates, they are all applying here in Singapore and they're planning to stay back, take the long-term visa and stay back. I don't know, and with no guarantee that they would get a job. Everything was quite uncertain at that point. And within 2 months, my visa would expire, my student visa. And my mom was like, why are you not applying? What is stopping you? I was like, it's the toughest job market. I don't know if I'll get a job. So, why bother? When the success rate is so low, why should I put myself through this agony? She's like, okay, you give it a try. Again, she gave me a nudge. So yeah, she's played a huge role in whatever success I've achieved. So yeah, she was like, okay, give it 1 month and then we'll see. So I gave my mother that promise that 1 month I'm going to sincerely apply and sincerely try to get a job in Singapore. In the midst of that, I was also preparing for my SQE because I wanted to do my UK bar.
Right.
That was something that was there in my head. So because I saw that the UK qualification is quite desirable everywhere. So it adds to your chances of getting a job abroad. So in a lot of job applications, I saw that they want either Singapore qualified or UK qualified lawyers. So that was another reason why I took up SQE. I've still not cleared it because I've not had the time to study. But yeah, that is one thing that's there in my head, to clear my SQEs and become a dual qualified lawyer. It will also add to my skill set. So that's another thing. So anyway, I was studying for that and I diligently applied. I think I made 1,000 applications before I landed anything in Singapore. A lot of cold emailing, a lot of meetings with a lot of lawyers, with a lot of law firm partners. The only positive thing I see out of this, the whole chaos that I went through for that 1 month, was I got to meet a lot of people, and it really built my confidence. Because when you meet, what I found in Singapore was people were very approachable. They would meet me for a cup of coffee to discuss things or to even guide me. Even if they would not offer me a job, they would help me, they would guide me, or they would recommend me. They would tell me, okay, you should meet this and this person. Maybe this person is right for you. So, yeah, a lot of networking happened in that 1 month and a lot of applications happened. And then when I was going through LinkedIn, I saw that PCA was hiring. And I was like, okay, why not? Let me give this a shot. Since I'm applying to so many places, I'll apply to PCA as well. I used to dream about working at PCA when I was in my law school. And, the whole UN system and everything, just at Peace Palace. And I used to just imagine, being at Peace Palace, working at Peace Palace. So yeah, sort of manifested it, you can say. So yeah, I applied to PCA. And before I knew, I had 3 job offers, including PCA. So I had my graduation and I had 2 job offers in the hand. So I negotiated a better deal out of the second one. And it was a law firm. The other 2 were law firms in Singapore. And I got a good deal out of it. So I was supposed to join this law firm. And I was ready for my convocation and everything. And I went for my convocation. And next day I flew back to India, knowing that, my work visa will take some time to process. In the middle, the day I reach India is the day I get a call from Singapore, from PCA, that they want to schedule an interview for me. So mind you, I had not heard from them in 2 months. I had not heard from them at all. So I thought that, I did not get it. So suddenly, just the day I reach India, I get a call from them that they want to take an interview and they want to schedule an interview. Yeah, it's just, luck has a lot of role to play in this. So yeah, I decided to give the interview anyway. It's I have nothing to lose. Even if they don't take me, I already have a job offer in my hand. So I think I was a little more relaxed at this point because I already had a job offer in my hand and my visa was being processed at that point. So I was like, okay, So I gave that interview with a very relaxed head, not with a very stressed mind, which really helped me land that interview. So I gave my interview and my boss was really nice, Dr. Tulio. He was quite nice. I gave my interview, and I had to give a written exam for my. Whenever you apply to PCA, whether it's an internship or a job, they have a written assignment that they give you as part of the interview process. So I had that and I cleared it. I cleared that. While that interview process was going on, while I gave my assignment, my visa got stuck with the other law firm. So at this point, I was like, shit, I've given my interview, but my visa, there's some visa issue with my previous law firm. And looks like I might not get that. So if I don't get PCA, I don't have anything. So again, there was this whole, again, I was back in that stress zone, and they could not process my visa because as in there were some hurdles because they have to advertise for the position, they have to justify why that why we are hiring a foreigner over a local. So this is something that you will find in almost all jurisdictions wherever you apply abroad, that whenever they are giving you a job, whenever they're applying for your work permit, they have to advertise and they have to show that they could not find anyone in the local who can do that job, and that's why they're hiring a foreign. So they really have to justify why they're vouching for you. So my visa got stuck, and I had already taken a flat and everything, like a room on rent in Singapore, knowing that I'll be moving there, and everything got to a halt. And luckily, the PCA offer came, so I told a big no to the law firm because they made some mistake because of which my visa got stuck. And yeah, I joined PCA.
Wow. That's a roller coaster of a journey. And yes, I agree, it was great manifestations. You were spoiled for choices at a lot of times. But I would disagree with you on the luck part. I'd say maybe luck took place when your mom nudged you in the direction of trying for these applications. But 1,000 applications, it's not luck at all. It's your hard work, your smart work, your way of working. It's truly inspiring, ma'am, genuinely. It is. I think in a way, I'm understanding how maybe taking a small step could lead you to so many greater opportunities that you never ready for.
It's all about those little steps, and it's all about believing in yourself.
Taking the
And if you don't believe in yourself, believe in the people who love you and are always there.
You have no idea how much impact this has, because college has been very, very obviously, it's been interesting, but it also has its difficult points. But hearing things from someone who has been through college, who has been through so much with this roller coaster of a ride, I would say, it's quite inspiring to listen to these words and comforting, obviously. So let's focus on your current journey. You're currently practicing as a litigation counsel before the Calcutta High Court and the Supreme Court of India, handling civil and commercial disputes. Now, how was your international legal education influencing this litigation practice? Did you face any challenges while transitioning from this international arbitration environment to back to practicing in Indian courts?
Yes. So for me, the major hurdle when I came back to India, when I started applying, was the gap that I had in my CV. Not in the sense that, there was a gap, but the gap was I was not in the job market for a year. Or I would say 2 years, because I was working in Singapore and I was doing arbitration, and I was working in an arbitral institution which takes up work for the tribunal. You're serving the tribunal, you're acting as a tribunal secretary when you're working with PCA, and you're assisting the tribunal with their research work and with their hearings, the administrative part, so on and so forth. So for me to show that, I have some connection in the sense that I've done drafting, I have that kind of exposure, it became a little difficult because once you pick a certain kind of a job, it sticks with you. So you get typecasted. So then you have to start from scratch. So yes, even though my LLM did help me in landing a job, in the sense that I had an advanced degree and I had my studies and my experience, but when I came to India, for me, that very thing, my very job, became a hurdle in the sense that those were not the skills that an Indian law firm was looking for. So for me, litigation was another thing that I really enjoyed. So I have like done internships in litigation throughout my 5 years of law school, except the last two internships that I did, which was with Manu Patra and the other one was with Shantu. These two internships were the only ones which were non-litigation. So all my other internships were purely litigation, and it was something that I really enjoyed. also the reason why I enjoyed arbitration, because it is a court of first instance. What you're doing in the court is essentially what you're doing in an arbitration proceeding, just that it's a more informal setting. So for me, litigation was always a calling. I really enjoyed litigation. When I was doing my internship in Supreme Court, I was so fascinated by it. I remember in Court 13, Justice Chandrachud used to sit, and when my seniors' cases were not going on, I used to just go and sit in his room, in his courtroom, and I would just listen to the submissions, the way the style of advocacy and the way they are making the submissions, the thinking on the feet, and might I add the court drama. I really enjoy it. I really enjoyed it. So for me, litigation was something that I really truly enjoyed. So when I decided to come back to India, I decided to practice in Calcutta High Court, which is my hometown, for a year. I went through some personal things. I had a loss in my family. So for me, it was also another reason for me to come back, because I always prioritize my relationships over everything. So for me, my family comes first. So I went back to India and I started practicing in India, which really helped me because before this, I had never appeared in court. So for me, it was a very nice learning experience where I started to learn how the court works, how the court procedure is, how you're supposed to frame the arguments, how you're supposed to address the court. These are things that you learn when you're there in the court. The courtroom itself is a very good teacher, like being in the court, you just learn so many things. I learned from my clerk how to filing, which department you have to go to, these things. So yeah, it was quite a good learning experience. And then this year I decided to move to Supreme Court. So yeah, Delhi has always been a comfort space for me because I did my law school from Delhi. So for me, Delhi was my go-to place. So if it's not Calcutta, it has to be Delhi for me. So I decided that it was time that I moved to Delhi. When I moved here, I have started working with a senior advocate, who was my mentor. So yeah, I am learning a lot under his guidance.
That's beautiful, ma'am. That's beautiful. And especially your point about the relationships. I'm really sorry for your loss. But prioritizing and taking action where you think it's required, it's a difficult step, but you took it. And that's amazing, genuinely. Your journey has been beautiful and inspiring in so many different ways, ma'am. So, with this, we reach our final question. What advice would you like to give to our listeners who are considering an LLM abroad, but they're unsure if it's the right choice for them?
So the advice that I would like to give students is to not do LLM just to get a job abroad. It is a lot more than that. You do an LLM not just to get a job abroad, but to learn. I think learning should be your major inspiration, your major inclination towards doing any further studies. Like if I were to consider a PhD, it should purely be on the basis that I really want to learn. It cannot be the basis of me getting a job, because that then you're not being authentic to yourself. So for me, I feel that that is the number one thing. Second thing, an LLM not only teaches you in terms of learning, but it also helps you build those connections for life. I did not tell you this, but my batch at NUS was the only batch, the only all female batch.
Wow.
So we were a bunch of 24 girls who were studying there together, and we built a strong sisterhood, and it's still active. And if I still reach out to them, they'll be there for me. So it is also about building those connections and building those relationships, because you never know when you need one, and you never know, how they will help you and how they'll guide you. And they're all quite established now. They're all working in some really good law firms. They're all placed really well right now. So that is my second giveaway from your end. My third giveaway would be that LLM in itself is a journey. It will have ups and downs, but just remember that you can always come back to your own country and you can practice. It does not have to be that, and you can always build yourself here and go back. So don't apply to an LLM for jobs. This is my only advice. In to make a crux out of it. Don't apply for that. Apply for your own learning and for your own experience.
Very true. Very true. So that brings us to the end of this episode. I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you. I mean, I know I've said that enough times, but your journey was very, very inspiring, very incredible. Thank you so much for the advice. Some of the advice that you have given are very new to me, very unique. I've not heard them before. So I'm sure it'll be very insightful for the guests as well, for the listeners as well.
I hope so too.
For sure, ma'am. And thank you so much again for being here. It was a pleasure having you on.
So much for inviting me. I had a great conversation with you, Ria, and
Thank you.
I hope to be in touch with you in future. And I
course.
would love to know what you're doing after your law school. So
You'll
be
be
in
the first
touch.
one to know, ma'am, for sure. You'll be one of the first ones to know. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you found today's discussion as enlightening as I did. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, rate, and leave us a comment. Thank you so much.